Hi, I'm Claire, founder of Creativity Found, a community for creative learners and educators, connecting adults who want to find a creative outlet with the artists and crafters who can help them do so, with workshops, courses, online events and kits. For this podcast, I chat with people who have found or refound their creativity as adults. We'll explore their childhood experiences of the arts, discuss how they came to the artistic practices they now love, and consider the barriers they may have experienced between the two. We'll also explore what it is that people value and gain from their newfound artistic pursuits, and how their creative lives enrich their practical, necessary, everyday lives. I have invited some podcast shows that I admire and think you might like to make guest appearances on the Creativity Found podcast feed. I have chosen an episode from each show that communicates something of the Creativity Found ethos. Please enjoy, and I hope you're inspired to listen to more episodes by today's guest podcaster.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Narratives of Purpose. My name is Claire Murigande. I am your host on this show, and my goal is to amplify social impact by bringing you inspiring individual stories of ordinary people who are making extraordinary social impact within their communities or around the world. So if you're looking for a program that showcases unique stories of changemakers, stories of people who are contributing to make a difference in society, and at the same time you want to get inspired to take action, then this podcast is definitely for you. My second guest this November is Jean-Philippe Kalonji, also known as JP Kalonji. JP is an illustrator, a comic artist, and a painter based in Geneva, Switzerland. He is the artistic director at Civitas Maxima, an NGO that defends victims of war crimes. JP is also an editorial illustrator for the newspaper Le Temps, likewise headquartered in Geneva. I have known JP for several years now, and he is one of the many artists I believe should share the mic on this show, alongside social entrepreneurs and other change makers. So for this very last episode of our second season, we bring an artistic touch to the conversations we've had all along, specifically around the topic of social justice, which is our focus this month. Do take a moment to rate and to review our show on your preferred podcast listening app. But right now, listen to JP's journey and how he contributes to social change as an artist. Very warm welcome to you, JP. It's a great pleasure to have you on this show. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
So I've known you now for quite a while, but I'd like to give you the chance to introduce yourself to our audience. So who is JP and what would you like to share with our audience from your background?
Yeah, I'm a cartoonist, author, comic author. I do a lot of storyboard. I work for the press, usually. And I work also in the comics world. I did a lot of several different work and genre. I like to switch from different style to another one. Paper is not only my battlefield. This is what I like to say. I do this since now, 20 years now, more than 25 years. I started really early. And I enjoy doing this. And this is my life.
So you just said right there that you've been doing this for 20 years. Give us a little bit of a sense of how your path was to reach where you are today.
First of all, I think drawing started like any young kid. For me, it was by passion, and I really knew earlier that I really want to do it as my everyday life. And I started to realize this is what I want to do. For a living. Watching other artists and cartoonists and people who just draw incredible characters or write stories, and they simply inspire me. And when you are inspired, by these people, for me, it became natural. I knew that this is what I want to do. I was like completely focused on drawing day by day by day. When all my friends was like popping out, to have fun. I was the geek, the weird guy. I don't like to use that word about like geek things, but I was just passionate about drawing and how drawing continued to nourish me and touch me and can touch also like people, like the power of the drawing, is. So I love my job. I love my work. I love what I do. And I feel very fortunate to do what I do right now, because also I met a lot of professionals, during all my career. These big professionals who now became friends, the people who I used to admire. So it's a very long process, from the age of 16 to 21 to the first time when I met, my first editor. It was for a magazine here, a local magazine in Geneva. We talk about like youngsters, bande dessinée, graphic novels, and it was called it like Saufkeeper, and the guy was Mark Villa, and this guy is, I think, is the first one who gave me my chance. So I would like to thank him. Is the one who gave me my chance. It was in 1992. I made my first comic book called Street Nation. It was like short novel stories about like the hip hop world, but the hip hop world in Geneva, when this music came, in Switzerland, in Geneva. So I decided me to translate, all my stories and all the good stories and the good vibes that we have here in short novels, short drawings.
Now, I'd like us to focus perhaps on something that you've been doing much more recently. You're the artistic director of an organization called Civitas Maxima, which is focusing on supporting victims of international crime. So first of all, tell me a bit about that organization, and then, what led you to join them?
Well, Civitas Maxima is an independent legal representation of victims of war crimes and crimes against humanity. And it was built and created by Alain Werner. And I met, for the story, Alain is an old friend from now 20 years. He used to work at the Tribunal Penal International. Yeah, I saw him like many times on TV, because he actually pled the case of Charles Taylor. In 2016, he called me. He said like, "Hey JP, how you doing? Do you still like drawing?" I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And he said like, "Are you up for a coffee?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And so been in a coffee, and then he had this idea. Like then he said, "Look, I would like to put some illustration in my annual report." And it was like, "What? Like, do you want to make some drawings in your annual report talking about like victims of war crimes and crimes against humanity?" And my first thought, in the beginning, it was like really shocked because my drawing is more like not funny, but such a comics hero, Japanese style vibes, and I didn't make like the relation, like how can I help you? And I mean, and then he said like, wait a minute. Then he proposed me to create a character called Musu as a little girl. Then she can tell exactly the adventures of what happening in Liberia. We'll talk about the mass murder and the atrocity during the bloodshed. In the beginning, he said like create some character or illustrate some topic of my annual report, and this is exactly what I made. And then he was really, really, really happy. And in the world of lawyers and expert and judge, and there was a mass big response on positivity, like, wow, this is great. Such a great idea, Alain, to illustrate this. Because let's be honest, like with all the problems of the world, right now, of course, it was before the pandemic. A lot of people was like in their bubble, don't want to hear about like what happened in Africa or even in Yemen, except the people who really work, in this kind of field. And my work was to create a bridge through my drawings, to put a word or translate, the words or probably the review or the report, and also explain what the NGO exactly do. It was very, essential for Alain put in light that it's a collaboration with also the local NGO in Liberia, and not seen as European white guys who we're going to make the difference, or this is our goal. No, what I remember and what I always notice from Alain is, first of all, it's about the victims. It's to give them a place, a word, then they can explain, and to find justice. It's very important for him, and it's crucial for, I think it's the core of Civitas Maxima. This past year marks the 5 years anniversary of Civitas Maxima, and it was in 2017. Let me read you, what he said about it. He said, this past year marks the 5-year anniversary of Civitas Maxima, a journey since our start, and we are very proud of how far we have come, and want to thank the victims for their trust, because this is the most important thing. He's the most passionate person that I ever met in his field, and all the people of Civitas that who I work with. I'm really fortunate and lucky to work with this incredible talent, and this is what I love also in my work, because the drawing era, everything what I've done, just lead me to work in this kind of field. And probably I've jumped to your question about like how come?
Exactly.
I could say, like, I'm not only a cartoonist, I'm not only a comics author, I'm not only an artist. I'm also a human being, and I'm living here, and I can't be, only in my bubble. What I could do, with my skills and with my art is to help in any way. Me, in a moment of my life, I was like, okay, you have fun. You've been in US. You had all those good things. You've been in Japan. You enjoy all that. So what now? If I can help, with my drawings, simply, if I can help, with my drawings, a cause such like this one, there is no question for me. I'm super lucky, and with the big experience, that I have with Musu and the cartoon that we create, with the crew of Civitas Maxima. After a year, it was so successful in Liberia and Monrovia that some of the artists there and people from the theater started to play the adventure of Musu, and they go in villages to talk about, like, okay, let's talk about our wounds. Let's talk about what happened, to the generation that didn't know, like, the genocide.
So basically being part of the healing process, right?
Exactly. Being a part of the healing process. I was astonished about, like, how many comic book and graphic novel talked about, like, the end, the apocalypse. Okay, great. We know the collapse, but now what? What are we going to do? Is anyone able to draw a future of it on the good side? And it's the same for movies. So, like, is anyone could show me, like, a future that is possible? Could someone have the power or the thought to project your mind into the future without seeing, like, this catastrophe? Like, when people say, like, yeah, but it was fire everywhere. Where can you see a bit of hope? I'm like, by looking forward and by believe that, no, this is not the end. I have a young girl. I'm a young dad. I have a girl of 6 years old now, and I don't want to say to her, like, oh, sorry, you're born, you know what? Everything's gonna fall apart. So just enjoy for the moment, because we're all gonna burn. No, this is my responsibility as an adult, as an artist, do the best as I can to be a part of the right history, and not feed the beast or feed the bad news. Of course, there is information. It's very important to say, like, there is this problem, but it's not about like avoid the problem or hiding, No, it's about like, okay, I want to talk to people who have solutions, who create, I want to be a part of these people. And this is the reason why I work with these NGOs, and the reason why I work with Le Temps, the newspaper, when they came to me and they decided to make a portrait of me.
So just for our listeners, Le Temps is a newspaper in Geneva, right? And so you're collaborating with them on editorials and on specific topics? Because I recall seeing a few articles where you had collaborated mostly about domestic violence as well and the heritage of Switzerland and colonialism, things that were not really known.
True. That one was a smart move from them because they were like, okay, let's talk about the colonial thing, and said like, okay, we have an artist, and I think he's gonna dig it. He's gonna plunge on it, and this is exactly what I did, and it was perfect.
Now, in terms of collaborating with Le Temps, do you see how your drawings are also participating in building this bridge? You mentioned earlier that you're kind of building this bridge between all these topics and getting closer to people. What is your observation there?
Yes, my observation is working with the press is working fast, sketching really quick. I observe also, first you have to learn and read, of course, the articles, before, everything have to be inked and approved, by the journalist and the chief editor before the printing. What I observe also is my way, my different manners of drawing, and my approach is to find the particular details in it that the reader can have a straight look, and he needs to have like two things in mind. First, look the picture and said, oh wow, this is beautiful. Second, the illustration have to reflect the general idea of the article. And I learned from day one since now. I love to read articles because first, I nourish my own knowledge about like different topics. I'm really here to just make a link. I'm the little chain who make that link. But that chain or that link have to be clean. Have to be a perfect DNA, in the article. And I gained their trust because my goal was like, okay, I'm gonna make you beautiful, beautiful things that automatically you will call me like, hey, we have this topic. We need JP. You have to do this, baby.
So you basically established yourself as an artist of reference, if I can say, for their newspaper.
I honestly can say that. And in a moment, I'm happy to say that there is like some journalists who would say like, hey, I have this article, but I want Kalonji who make the drawing for this. And some of them say like, oh, but we could put a photo. Like, no, I want an illustration of Kalonji. And some readers said like, hey, you know what? I buy Le Temps now because I see your drawing and I read the article. So it's a win-win, it's a win-win. And for me also, it established me as oh, wow, okay, you draw on Le Temps, it's serious.
I have this feeling that maybe artists in general, or even culture at large, if you take it like that, the impact in society is not always recognized. Do you see it that way or not? And how do you see that evolving in the future?
It's a quite long story of artists who've not been recognized, or the cultural genre is not recognized, by society, and then being abused or used, and people don't see the actors. But during the pandemic, lots of people were, locked, of course, and they realized like without all the essential group of people around the world, of artists or actors in any kind of discipline, suffer this lack of recognition, but also open an eye, a clearly eye of there is a problem. A country without culture is not a country. We are essential to the life in general of anyone. The culture it's one of the core. It's very important. You cannot put aside that. Yeah. It's not possible. I mean, people traveling to go in different cities of Europe. In Italy, it's all about the culture. You go in Italy, you go in Rome. Oh, come on. This city is just like, okay, there was the Colosseum, but the rest, all these paintings to this culture, that it smell that, And when you go in New York or the MoMA or in Africa, it's so linked to what we are now, as human beings.
Invest in culture and support artists. That's the message, right?
Yeah, the message is just like investing, because you gain on that. It's interesting now that to see that Red Bull, this energy drink company, was more into extreme sport, and now they're changing their vibes into like artists, street artists. They invest a lot in that, like convention and things. So they realize the impact. Okay, there is that, the influencers, this or that, but artists nowadays, it's competition is tough. But as long as you know what you have, if you have interesting to say, you always find a place.
This example you're sharing with me, that Red Bull is switching their gears from extreme sports to artist. What would you, as an artist and doing this for over 20 years now, what would be your advice to the younger generation or someone who'd come up to you? Let's say your daughter, you mentioned your daughter is 6 years old. If in a few years she says, Dad, I want to go this path, what would be your main advice from your experience so far?
Main advice was simple. Love what you do. Be serious with that. Be committed. Enjoy every minute, because it's a passion. And at the end, when it's a passion, it's not a work. You could spend like 48 hours just like woohoo, drawing like crazy. Of course, you're going to be tired at a moment, and then you take a break. But you don't feel that like, sometimes, of course, it's not common. The character that you have in your mind is not flawless as you want. But there is something like very spiritual with the drawing. It's something that is not physically here, is in your mind, in your spirit. Any flawless come into your mind, then it's a little bit weird. Then it's become a bit more clear, and then boom, you put this on the paper, and then the idea that you have in your mind close from 98%, and then you put it on your sheet is just like 74, 75. But it's I think this process for me, it's okay, we call magic. But for me, drawing have a spiritual connection. Yeah, the advice is be committed to what you do, and do it seriously, and do it with the heart. It's success. As long as you do this, with your heart, it's successful. Go wild, be you, be honest with your work, and whatever you could do, it's you, because we all have one fingerprint.
There's this thing I like to do at the end of every discussion with my guests, which is my quick preview questions. I have 3 short questions because I like to find out, what type of music you're listening to or what books you're reading. So I have 3 short questions. And the first one is, what is the music that you're listening at the moment, or what is the book that you're reading? Do you have something that is kind of on repeat on your playlist, for instance? Or do you have a book on your nightstand that you can just go to bed without reading?
It's so difficult because I draw. I most of the time I put soundtrack movies. I like soundtrack movies to draw, and it depends again, like the drawing. It could be like from hip hop to rock to punk rock to UK stuff. Loyal Kerner is just one of the guy I'm listening a lot. I'm listening a lot, some still my man, Yasin Bey, aka Mos Def. Some old school stuff, some new stuff also. I discovered a lot of new artists. This is like, it's too many. It's difficult to say. And the last album probably of Pharaoh Monch. This is really lyricist punk rock sound. This is kind of very energetic music. And in terms of books, the book now is the Bible way of Judaism story. It's called Sefer HaYashar.
The second question is, Is there a book or even a specific music album, whatever, that had resonated with you at a specific time in your life?
Yes, there is a specific book, a specific one. It's Hagakure. The Hagakure is the code of Bushido samurai, in Japanese. It's an old treaty written from the 18th to the 16th century. It's really interesting in terms of book. And in terms of music, D&B, drum and bass when I want to get mad, just like, woo! And if I have to choose one track, I'm not going to say one track. One artist is Dilindra, drum and bass.
And my very, very last one, but I think this is a tough one. Maybe you don't have an answer to it, is that do you have like an all-time favorite, be it book or music, that you would say people need to listen to that or people need to read this book?
For the music, it will be Miles Davis, So What? And for the book, easy. For me, it would be the Bible. Easy.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for the time. I know this took a lot of time and I really appreciate it. It was great to connect with you again. And thank you for sharing your journey with me and with our listeners.
No problem. Thanks again to all the listeners and for the podcast and for you for the invitation.
That was episode 25, a conversation with J.P. Kalonji. I truly enjoyed this discussion and was delighted to host an artist for the first time on the podcast. I really like how JP uses his skills and his art beyond entertainment to support different causes as something natural that shouldn't be even questioned. I must confess that I regained interest in reading the newspaper Le Temps since I saw his illustrations. This goes to show how impactful his drawings are. Thank you so much for tuning in today and listening to this new episode. Or should I say, this last episode, which concludes our second season. Join me again soon for more stories of social impact from global change makers. If you want to be a featured guest or you know someone who might be interested, feel free to reach out. You can send us an email at narrativespodcast, all in one word, at gmail.com. You'll find the email address in the show notes. Or you can contact us directly on social. We are on Facebook at Narratives of Purpose, on Instagram at narrativesofpurpose_podcast, and on LinkedIn at Narratives of Purpose Podcast. Don't forget to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts and share our show within your network. Make sure you also sign up for our newsletter on our homepage so you can stay informed firsthand about all our activities. Until the next episode, take care of yourselves, stay well, and as always, stay inspired. This podcast was produced by Tom at Rustic Studios.